Hello there everyone, welcome to Edupedia World 9th Grade Computer Applications video lecture series. I am Upeka Vandibona, and from this episode we are going to talk about elementary concepts of objects and classes. A class depicts a real-world entity. So when you design a class, think about the objects that will be created from that class type. For example, here we got shopping cart and button. They represent a real-world entity. If we take the button class as a factory, we can create many objects using it. Now think about the things each object knows and each object does. For example, in the button class, each button object knows about the label and the color. From button object to button object, the label value or the color value may be different, but all of them knows about a label and a color. For the shopping cart class, each of the shopping cart objects may be vary with the cart contents, but each and every shopping cart knows about its own content. When we consider about the things that shopping carts does, all of the shopping carts objects should be able to add content to the cart, remove content from the cart, and also check out content at the cashier. So with these things, we can get an idea about the behavior of the shopping cart. Things an object knows about itself are called instance variables. They represent an object's state, which means the data, and can have a unique values for each object of that type. Think of instance as another way of saying object. So what object knows about itself are called instance variables. Things an object can do are called methods. When you design a class, you think about the data an object will need to know about itself, and you also design the methods that operate on that data. It's common for object to have methods that read or write the values of the instance variables. For example, alarm objects can have instance variables to hold the alarm time and two methods for getting and setting the alarm time. So apart to the getting and setting of the values for the instance variables, you can see the general behavior such as snoozing in the alarm and playing in the song. Now we are giving you an exercise. Fill in what a television object might need to know and do. Did you finish the activity? Here are some sample answers. For a television class, we can define instance variables as follows. For the size instance variable, the values would be 12 inches, 14 inches, 18 inches and so on. Is colored means whether it is a colored television or a black and white television. With the is support 3D instance variable, we can define whether it is support 3D or not supporting the 3D. The type instance variable mentions whether it is a flat LCD one, LED one or else a CRT one. So those are the few of the instance variables we can define in a television. As behaviors, which means the methods we can identify: switch on the TV, switch off the TV and change the brightness of the television, and channel tuning. Now let's try to figure out what's the difference between a class and an object. So a class is not an object, you must remember that. A class is a blueprint for an object. It tells the virtual machine how to make an object of that particular type. Each object made from that class can have its own values for the instance variables of that class. For example, you might use the button class to make dozens of different buttons, and each button might have its own color, shape, size, label and so on. So what you need to know is a class is not an object, but it's used to construct them. So like as you see in here, with one dog class you can create many different dog objects with different breeds, names and sizes. So what does it take to create and use an object? You need two classes. One class for the type of object you want to create, the dog, the alarm clock, the television, etc. And another class to test your new class. So this tester class is where you put the main method. And in that main method, you create and access objects of your new class type. The tester class has only one job, to try out the methods and variables of your new object class type. So in this illustration, you can see the dog class. With the class keyword, we are defining the class name dog, and with the curly braces, we are defining the instance variables and methods. As instance variables of the dog class, we have size, breed, and name. As size is a number, we are using the data type int, and as breed and name are text values, we are using the data type string. As string is a reference data type, not like the int, which is a primitive data type, we are using the uppercase S for the string. We'll come into these reference data types and primitive data types in later episodes. Just for now, remember, with string we can define text values. With int, we can define number values. Under the bark method, we got println statement with rough. So now we need a driver class. That means the class which includes the main method. So under this main method, we first create a new dog object. To create the object, we use this statement with the new keyword. You can use any name to identify the object, like we are using the letter D to identify this dog object. And then to access the instance variables and methods of the object, we are using something special called the dot operator. See how we assign the value for the size instance variable. D, that means our object, dot size equal 40. So that's how we assign a value for the instance variable size. Likewise, you can assign the name and the breed. D dot name equal Timmy. And now look at how we tell it to bark by using the dot operator on the variable D to call bark. And now let's try to implement what we have learned in here. So we are going to use the Notepad++ as our text editor to write the codes. And we are using command prompt to compile and run the source codes. So first in the notepad we select the language as Java, and let's try to build up the dog class. And now we are trying to create the instance variables. Okay, now we are done with creating instance variables. We have 3 of them. Size, which is an int value, the name and the breed, which are string values. Now let's try to create the bark method. And remember always the semicolon at the end of the statement. Okay, now we are done with creating the dog class. Now let's create the driver class. Select the language as Java. And I'm going to name this driver class as main dog. And this is the main method. And now the first thing we are going to do is creating a new dog object. this is how we are creating dog objects with the new keyword. And now let's try to assign a value for the size instance variable. And also for the name. As this is a text value, we have to insert the value with the double quotations. And now let's try to call the bark method. Okay, now we are done with creating the main class. Now let's try to save them all. So we are going to save the source codes in this folder. So in the command prompt you can see I have changed the directory into the folder that the source codes are located in. From a previous episode we had shown you how to change from this default user directory to the folder where the source codes are located in, and why we have to do that. Okay, the next thing to do is compiling these two codes that we have created. So type the word jarback and the file names. You can see the dog class is correctly compiled. That means there are no errors. Now for the main dog class. Main dog was also compiled correctly. Now we have to run these classes. So for that we do not need to run the dog class. We only need to run the class which includes the main method. So that means the main dog class should be executed. If everything goes perfect, the output of the print statement in the bark method should be displayed in here. Code is perfect as we got the output rough at the command prompt. Like as the same way that we have assigned a value for instance variable, we can obtain a assigned value. Check now what I am going to do in here. So between the parentheses of the println statement, I have included a text string as well as some other part. So this plus mark means to concatenate this part with this part. So when you got the output of this statement, you can see it will concatenate this part with the value of this part. So let's try to save this file and compile it over here. We only need to compile this file as I have changed only this file. We do not need to compile the dog.java as I didn't touch its source code. Okay, we have compiled it, no errors. Okay, you can see in the output the value has obtained correctly. Okay, now I am going to give you some exercise. You have to implement this movie class and use it as you prefer in the main method. So it has 3 instance variables: title, genre and rating. It has a method as playIt, and you can implement this as you prefer. It's a simple exercise. Let's try to create a new file and choose the language as Java and build the movie class in here. Okay, it has 3 instance variables: title, genre and rating. Title is like a string variable And genre is also a string variable. And for the rating, we can give it a int data type. And now let's try to implement the play it method. So in this method, you can type anything as you prefer. In my play it method, you can see I have a whole lot of println statements. You can do as your own way. So in these three statements over here, I want to display the title of the movie, the genre of the movie, and the rating of the movie when someone plays it. So for that, I am going to concatenate the title instance variable, the genre, and the rating. Within the method, we can directly access its own class instance variables. So therefore, we do not need the dot operator. Now all we have to do is save this class. I'm going to name it movie. Okay, now we have to create the driver class. I'm going to name it main movie. Here is the main method. So inside the main method, I am going to create a new movie object. You can name it as you prefer. So I am going to name it as movie1. Okay, now the title of the movie1 is genre is and this is a integer value. Okay, now we have assigned a value for the instance variables title, genre, and the rating. Now we have to call the play it method. Okay, now we have created our driver class. Let's save it. Now all we have to do is compile and run the source codes. Javac movie.java. It's okay. Now javac main movie.java. It's compiled correctly. Now we can run the main movie. Everything is perfect. Now you can see the three statements. The movie is Titanic, genre is adventure, and the rating is 5, as we have assigned in the main movie class. Now let's try to create another movie object and play it. So this time I'm going to create a movie object with the name movie2. Okay, I have created the movie object and as well as assigned values for the instance variables. Now I have to do is play the movie. Let's save this file and compile again. Need to compile main movie.java because I only changed that part. Compiled it, okay, and now let's run it. So here you can see the playIt method is called 2 times. In the first instance it is for the movie1 object, the Titanic, and in the second instance it is for the movie2 object, the bucket list. Okay, now let's do a quick revisit to the main method. As you know, there are 2 users of main method. The first one is to test your real class and the second one is to launch or start your Java application. But as long as you are in the main method, you are not really in object orientation. It's fine for a driver program to run within the main method, but in a true object-oriented application, you need objects talking to each other, as opposed to main method creating and testing objects. A real Java application is nothing but objects talking to other objects. In this case, the talking means objects calling methods on one another. So now I am going to answer some frequently asked questions. If you have a question, please comment below. So the first question is, what is a Java program and what do you actually deliver to the client? So a Java program is a pile of classes, or at least one class. In a Java application, one of the classes must have a main method, and it is used to start up the program. So as a programmer, you write one or more classes, and those compiled classes are what you're gonna deliver. If the end user doesn't have a Java virtual machine, then you'll also need to include that with your application's classes so that they can run your program. There are a number of installer programs that let you bundle your classes with variety of Java virtual machines and put it all on a CD-ROM. So then the end user can install the correct version of the Java virtual machine which is suitable for their platform. Now the second question. What if I have 100 classes or 1,000? Isn't that a big pain to deliver all those individual files? Can I bundle them into a one application thing? The answer is yes. It would be a big pain to deliver a huge bunch of individual files to the end users, but you won't have to. You can put all of your application files into a Java archive, a .jar file, that's based on the zip format. In the jar file, you can include a simple text file formatted as something called a manifest that defines which class in that jar holds the main method that should run. Now, before winding up this episode, let's try to summarize what we had covered up to this point under the programming concepts and object orientation concepts. So the object-oriented programming lets you extend a program without having to touch previously tested working code. Hope you can remember the difference between procedural programming and object-oriented programming. All Java code is defined in a class, and a class describes how to make an object of that class type. So a class is like a blueprint. An object can take care of itself. You don't have to know or care how the object does it. An object knows things and does things. So we call them instance variables and methods. The instance variables represent the state of the object and methods represent the behavior of the object. When you create a class, you may also want to create a separate test class which you'll use to create objects of your new class type. So we call it driver class. A class can inherit instance variables and methods from a more abstract superclass. We'll come into that point later in more detail. At runtime, a Java program is nothing more than objects talking to other objects. And that's all what we got here in this episode. From the next lecture, we are going to try out some serious questions in Java to the point that we had covered up. So thank you for watching and see you in the next lecture. This video brought to you by edupediaworld.com. Watch more from our website.